Hello, I'm Kylie Munich, CEO of Screen Queensland. I think you're in for a real treat with this next session, Excellence in Craft, Championing Female Composers. I know this is a vital area of the screen industry, and I look forward to hearing what amazing insights come out of today's session.
I need to do an acknowledgement to country. So my mob are Dunghutti and Bidjara, and I'm standing here now on Yugambeh country. So I'd really like to invite all of you who are watching today from wherever you are in the world to connect with your ancestors and pay your respects to those that have paved the way for all of us, particularly in Australia, for the care that's been given to the country, to our storytelling that's been deeply embedded to the music that echoes through our nature here. Thank you very much. And so this is the fourth episode of Excellence in Craft at APSA Forum. Sneha Kamwaka is an incredible musical composer, as is our moderator, Mealy, who's just, she's the Vice President of the Australian Screen Composers Award. Guild, sorry. And I would really like to tell you a little bit about Mile, because she's an award-winning composer, and Mealy Hay has composed music for film, television, dance, theatre. Her score for fantasy-driven 30-minute short film Last Tree Standing won Best Music for a Short Film at Australia's prestigious APRA Screen Music Awards. Her other works include the original composition for Museum Victoria's Screen Science Works, Planetarium Dome astronomy documentaries that if you've ever seen, the music is what moves you through this documentary. So she's very, very gifted. Check her out. She's done lots of things on SBS One in the series for the travel cooking show with Luke Nguyen as well. Mekong too. She's an incredible woman, and I'm so happy that she's moderating for Sneha, and I would love to let her talk about Sneha because she's going to be able to do a much better job than nervous me. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you for that. It's great to be here. So Sneha, thank you for joining us. I'd like to tell our audience about you first, and then just would love to learn more about your creative process and all the things that you've what inspires you, and just get to know your world a bit more. So, but firstly, just to let our people know, our listeners know, that you've released over 19 albums. You've got 460,000 monthly listeners on Spotify, 23,000 Instagram followers. You've been on TEDx and just done this amazing show that I've seen on YouTube, utilizing coding and spatial technology to create music. And you're a regular TV celebrity, including previous MTV host for the segment Sound Tripping, which I'd love to discuss a bit more. From a film perspective, I guess all the media seems to point towards Gangs of Wasseypur of 2013, but I understand you've written for well over 12 to 15, I think up to 20 feature films, and Gangs of Wasseypur got you Best Music Director at India's most prestigious film awards, the Film Fanfare Awards. And I understand the last film you did, Manti of 2018, got released in Cannes, which won People's Choice Award at Toronto International Film Festival, and it also won Best Actor at Asia Pacific Screen Awards, which is why we're here, and it also swept up 7 awards in India's premier film awards, the Filmfare Awards. So thank you so much for joining us, and I'm excited to learn about the process of what makes you tick, how it all happens. So welcome.
First of all, really nice to meet you. In fact, I've never been interviewed by or had a discussion publicly with a composer herself, and it's just I'm really looking forward to this, because I know when I'll be talking, you will be listening and also understanding most of the deeper details and things like that. So thanks for having me, and thanks APSA for having me.
Oh, yeah, it's been a real pleasure just to research your work and to understand the world in which you work in. And so I hope you don't mind, just for us mere mortals in the Western world, what does the term, before we start, I guess I just wanted to get a broad overview of what does the term Bollywood mean to you, and should we be using that term when we talk about Indian cinema?
Okay, so I like to say this, and it's not a negative connotation. So already addressing that, I like to say that Bollywood is an entertaining circus of sorts. It's based on entertainment and kind of focuses on song and dance and dreams, aspirations, and I think it sort of caters to making the audiences happy and excited. And I think that's what Bollywood stands for. And because it's so true to this thing, this philosophy overall, it has also it's a very strong subculture, in India, and it's almost put the country on the map,
Yeah.
because it's so authentically Bollywood. And so I would say that it's exciting to have Bollywood in the country, and it's exciting to have grown up watching Bollywood and being influenced by it. But as professionals in the Indian film industry, I would say there is a difference, and there is cinema that is being made, and there's music and other departments which cater to that kind of cinema, which is not necessarily holding entertainment as the main agenda. And I feel like that's the difference. Nobody really talks about it because then that automatically is being spoken of as art house and parallel film, etc. But that's just that's because popular culture is still Bollywood. So so I hope I could answer that.
Yeah, that's
what
great.
I mean? It's like,
yeah, because I've noticed in the, I think it seems more appropriate to be calling it as Indian cinema or cinema in Hindu language, basically, but it's just cinema to your country, I assume. And I think it was Gangs of Wasseypur, which was like a film, almost like a film noir, a thriller, which didn't really ring true to me in sort of that Bollywood entertainment happy sense. So and it sounded like it really broke a lot of ground. So so before we go into how you recorded for that film, I just wanted to understand what the difference is in your world, in your industry. You're called a music director in the way that you're referenced in the media, and how do you see, what is your role as a music director in the Indian film industry, as opposed to a composer, what we know as film composing in our side of the world?
Right. So again, I think Indian cinema has always thrived on music and songs and vocal songs. And which is why there was always this HOD for music who was called the music director. Not the musical director, because it was not theater, it was film. And so music director who had to make these songs and this album that would be released before the film, and sort of would give a voice to the protagonists of the film. And that was most crucial in our I mean, I'm literally, I don't know why am I getting goosebumps speaking this or speaking about this, because it's so ingrained in our culture to have grown up on certain vocalists and their voices, and those voices imposed on certain actors who were legends and stars, and who obviously were popular Bollywood again. And and they had become they were personifying philosophies. Like when there was industrialization in 70s and all that, there were angry young men who played the roles of who sort of represented the the generation which was underemployed, or
So,
unemployed, and because of industrialization and all that. So there was always this society reflection, and these heroes and heroines were really important, and their voices reached out the most. And India just loves music, and they love lyrics, poetry, and sung music. And even like till today, people's communication has been very very musical. Every festival is just full of music. So to answer your question, director was that guy who gave that environment of music to a film. And so he had to compose, he had to arrange, he had to sit with the lyricist, the director. And I still do that. So the music director has to read the script, sit with the director, make the songs, sit with the poet, with the lyricist, decide upon the singers, create the environment of the music. And hence I think it's the music director. Whatever that means.
Yeah, I really love this approach, because often it's sort of done in reverse for us anyway. In the sort of the regular feature film world here, we're just given the film in rough cut. It's mostly, sometimes even fine cut, but they'll keep on cutting, keep on calling it a fine cut. And we don't, I mean, sometimes people have good relationships, long-term relationships, composer, director, but more often than not, we're just given the film, plonked it, and then find the film world having looked at it. But I find it really amazing that it's so forward thinking from an auditory point of perspective, that you've read the script and you are trying to define the auditory world and define the character's sonic voice before you've seen any footage. Have I understood that to be correct?
Yeah. No, absolutely. In fact, and it's a lot of fun to work like that.
Yeah.
Because the insight that you get from the director, which is not directly musical, but it's just about so much that automatically seeps into your music. You've been hanging out with him or the team or other HODs. So it's a more, I mean, there are times when, the films are sort of already being shot. So you literally are given short briefs, and you're expected to make songs on them. For example, it's a love song, and the guy, these guys have just returned from a holiday, and now it's a love song, and they've just realized they're in love. So make a song. So it's like make a vocal song about something really specific. Sure, that's fun too. But yeah.
And so it's fascinating that the album gets released before the film gets released. So did I have that right? Yeah. So you're building up an interest through the music first, which is just like, it's giving me goose pimples. Like you're connecting with your audience through a sonic musical language first, before they've even seen the story and seen the movie. And I find that amazing that the population loves that.
Do you know, I mean, in those times, and I'm talking about like 40s, 50s, and then 60s, 70s, 80s obviously saw another time, another era. But of what I hear from my parents, when they used to go to watch films in theaters, which was an event, it used to be an event. Multiplexes came in later, and now of course everybody's going digital. But earlier, to go to a theater to watch a movie, 70mm, 35mm, whatever, was an event. And outside of the theater, you would get these small booklets with all the lyrics of the songs of that album.
Yeah, I love it.
I know, that is really cute.
Yeah, that's gorgeous. And so is there much underscoring to film? Because I saw in some of the IMDb listings that there'd be the music director, well, there'd be you that says music by, and then there'd be another name, and then it would have in brackets background music. And what does that mean in your industry?
All the musicians always talk about it, and we laugh about it as well. But there is a, it's almost like how my family doesn't recognize the instrument bass. Like they don't know if it is a thing. Like if I were to become a bass player and I would stand in the middle of my living room and play to, let's say, a family of whatever, all my extended family play the bass, they would be like, okay, but we can't hear anything. I mean, it's like they're still, yeah. So it's like, how bass is for my kind of people, as against the guitar, which is like, okay, yeah, you play the guitar, oh wow,
Okay.
nice,
Yes.
we can hear it.
Yeah.
So similarly, background score as a concept, although it has been used beautifully over all these years. I mean, R.D. Burman has done a job with films like extremely Bollywood films like Sholay and all that. But still, the background score was always the background score because it was done after the film was edited and all that. And so it was another person's territory. The music, the songs, and the themes and all of that was pretty much done by the music director. Sometimes the music director would end up scoring as well. In my case, and this is musician to musician, I'll tell you, like just between you and me, although it's not any between you and me, but I felt that I was not I am not that good at scoring, because I felt that because I would know what is happening in the film, my every theme would reek of all the information. like like I would know what is going to happen in the end. So there was, like, I felt that my themes always said everything, and that may not be so good for scoring. Like you go slowly with the film as things are revealed, etc.
And as a and is it often separated now to those roles as the background scorer versus the person who writes the songs?
No, so lately and over the last 10-15 years, there have been some good background scores, and there have been music directors who also do the background score. So sometimes you'll see music and background score by.
Yes.
by
Okay.
So,
Right.
the designation is still a bit confused, but background score is just like becoming more and more important in the country, and I think that's great in our industry, and that's
It's interesting because it's a little bit in reverse for us here, because what you would call the background score, I guess we call underscore in some ways, unless there's a film that significantly has a song in it where the actors are singing the song. Usually the composer is the underscore for the film, and so that is the main composer for a film is actually for the underscore, which I think is what call the background score. But if they were to have a featured song, often the film or the producer may ask either the composer to write a featured song, and it's almost like a special treat for the composer to be able to do that, or the producers and directors might actually go to an artist that they actually like, an artist who releases albums, and ask to license their song. So it's like quite reverse in our two industries. So that's quite interesting. Sorry, go on.
Sorry, just to add to that, I mean, I have seen that certain scorers now only want to score, and they're very clear about it. But I have seen over, like in my experience of working here for 12 years, I have met people who are underscorers, as you call them, and have always tried to slip in a song. Like,
okay.
Hey, why don't you also listen to this song? Because somehow it's just there's more adulation for people who make songs currently, at least in Bollywood or in the Indian film industry.
And so how I did read somewhere that you recorded the way that the songs are recorded for the films. You did do something quite different in the way you've recorded the artists, recorded the songs. Was it? Can you tell me a bit about that?
Are you asking about Gangs of Wasseypur?
I think it was Gangs of Wasseypur. Yeah.
Right.
that you recorded sort of more outdoors, or it was different to a studio recording or something like that?
So yeah, to be honest, it wasn't as much a sound aspiration, to be honest. It wasn't like, okay, I need to find a new sound or anything like that. It's just that India being such a vast country, sometimes we are brought up in such a way that we don't know most about it. We don't know what the other states and other cultures, other languages, dialects, etc. And the region that Gangs of Wasseypur was set in, my director was from that region and he knew what he was talking about. He knew the people. I was brought up elsewhere and I just couldn't. I mean, there was no way to authentically relate to region without being there, like without going there. So I had to. I mean, I thought, why not just sort of make a trip and hang out with the locals, and automatically. Also, I just have this big appetite for any kind of music and just any kind of singing, any kind of instruments. I don't know. I mean, I even that. There's just no like. There's nothing I like or I don't like, to be honest. So 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 it was just quite natural to find amazing music in these regions, and then that sound became the sound of the film quite naturally, because I was in that zone.
I found that quite interesting that you talk about different regions of India, and I think that was part of your MTV program where you would go to other regions around India and different states, I presume, and discover new sounds or I assume new styles, or and did you, and is it quite distinctly different between regions musically to you in different
Oh
parts of
yeah.
India? Can you give us an example? Would it be something as simple as an instrument, or would it be the scales in which they use, or the microtunings, or is it just a general feel, or is it hard to define?
I mean, honestly, to answer your question very nicely, I would invite you here and just come and hang out and just let's travel after all this is over, because it's so it's very diverse to begin with. It's too diverse. It's like the weather changes, the food changes completely, the language obviously changes, dialects are within the region, there are like 3-4 dialects. So
yeah, amazing.
But there are these common factors which at least make you communicate with each other. And so sorry, but just to give you an example, like in Punjab, if you have scales that are more sad and more like that lean more towards like these kind of notes, da 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 da.
There's a real mournfulness about it. Yeah, it's really it's a mournful sound. Yeah.
So you are in Punjab. You can't set the scale in Bihar, where Wasseypur is set. In Bihar, something like that, which has got no complexity of what I just sang before, but it's got another kind of complex. So the food is very different there. What they grow agriculturally is very different. People are different. Societies are different. Patriarchal, matriarchal, all that. So there's so many differences, and their scales are affected. The grain is affected probably by the weather and where they have like their ancestors have forever lived, and so on. So
it's amazing just to hear the two different scales. You can feel there's the translation of depths of different emotive parallels that I wouldn't be able to pick it off, by hearing. I might be able to notate it and be able to get all technical about it and go, oh, okay, it uses a flat second or whatever, and that one doesn't. But you can hear there's a different quality in the emotive context of the first melody you sung and then the second melody you sung. So, and that's quite amazing. I mean, we just don't have that variety here in Australia. You don't say Queensland music is different to New South Wales music. It's just they're two different states, but we don't have that variety. So I find that just
Really? Are you
absolutely.
sure?
Yeah, pretty sure. I mean, sometimes they say there's a difference in culture or society between, say, Sydney and Melbourne, and we have fights about whose coffee is better. And Petra, who's my partner in crime here, helping me with the quick Q&As. Oh, which I should say to everyone actually who's listening, if you would like to ask a question, please use the Q&A function. And Petra is helping me ask the questions. Yeah, so there's definitely no difference. Bands travel up and down the East Coast, and we just interchange, and we're all one, and we're such a young country. We've only been settlers came in in the 1700s, but I'm sure there's a lot of course, our indigenous culture's been here for 60,000 years and over. But in terms of our popular culture music, there's definitely no variety like how there's nowhere near as much diversity and identity of diversity as you have said. So that's really interesting.
Although, yeah, what you're saying.
Oops. We're just losing Sneha a bit.
Sorry, there's a little latency in your.
Yeah. Yeah, go on. So say again. What did you just say?
Can you hear me now? There was a little slump in the internet.
Yeah.
Can you hear me now? Okay.
Yes.
So, I think if you were to listen to Indian music from these different regions within India, I don't think you as a non-Indian listener would be able to tell that there's any major difference. Like you'll still find a lot of common, structures and sense of notes within the music. But because
sorry, people.
Differences. Yeah, and
sorry, I think you've just dropped out a little bit. Were you saying what? Were you
sorry,
saying that? That's all right. Were you saying that? What were you saying about the different? Would a local Indian person from one state to a different state be able to tell the difference? Is that what you were getting at before?
Yeah, I was saying that if you were to live in, let's say, India for a good 10 years, then you would start to tell the differences between the regional music, But as an outsider at the moment, if you were to listen to these different regional, music pieces from within India, you still might think of all of it as Indian music, regional music.
Absolutely. And I've already learned something today that just from this conversation, in my very limited understanding of Indian music, it's like you said, I wouldn't be able to immediately catch the difference. But you pointing out the two differences just then was just really eye-opening. I've actually got a question here. Can you please give a scale to South Indian? Can you please give a scale to South Indian style from one of our listeners, Pradeep? Do you have something?
So South India is the least. Give a scale. Maybe I can sing something on hearsay. I mean, I can emulate something that I've been. Da da na da 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 na da. Basically, South Indian music would have obviously the heavy Carnatic influence, and it would just have another kind of projection.
It feels like a more throat quality. Have I heard that right?
It is. Yeah. In fact, there are a lot of scales that are similar in North Indian classical and South Indian like that. I haven't traveled in the South India as much. I have traveled to the Punjab, the Haryana, Bihar, and Rajasthan, and these places I can tell you the differences, exact differences. In South India, I would say it's more than scales. I would say what shouts out at me is the throat throw.
Yes,
The
and certainly that's what I heard there in terms of the timbre of the way it was of the voice is seems quite
yeah,
different
yeah.
to what your examples before. So it's just fascinating.
Yeah, but in fact, to tell you the specific scales that are emotionally more expressive of the people in South India, then you would have to talk about what South India are you talking about? Are you
Mm,
talking about Andhra? You're talking about Kerala, Tamil Nadu, and so on. So
Mm.
there are those differences. And then once I travel there, I'm sure there's a lot to discover.
yeah, there's still more to discover you as a local there in your country, in your own country. Um, I thought so. I did read that you grew up learning classical Indian music. Did I? That's what your Wikipedia page said, and I just wondered if you at what point did you step if that's correct, what point did you explore more into the contemporary style of popular music? Because you've gone right into the world of coding, and it looked like Max MSP on YouTube, and waving your hands and stuff happens musically. So not only have you gone from classical world, but then you've gone into producing bands and writing for bands, what we call bands. I think you might refer to as artists, and choosing your vocalists, to exploring in the world of algorithmic coding and music. Was there one point in time when you said, right, I want to break out of the classical Indian world, and here I am, or was it just more of a bit of a journey of experimenting here, experimenting there, and that's where you ended up?
So it would be right to say that my family is heavily into classical music. I myself have tried to dodge learning music as much as I could have, um, and but still, I mean, I know my ground basics because of my family, and it's very normal for me to sort of sit through uh, an hour long classical concert and all that without feeling bored or
Mm,
uninterested. So I would say that yes, my upbringing has been yeah uh, around people who are deep into classical music, but I play with music. Yeah, I mean, I'm not a conventional musician. I think having so much music in the family sort of threw me in the wrong direction, like threw me into the repulsion of it.
mm,
And
mm,
to begin with, because I felt that everybody I met were very pure to their own genres and
mm,
didn't think too much of the other genres. So
mm,
if I mean my family within them, they never thought too much of uh, ace of base, let's say,
mm,
or or the stuff I was doing aerobics to when I was a kid. So there was always this discord between these groups,
mm,
and I found that unnerving because I liked all of it. And
mm,
even today, I hang out with people who are making music in different ways, and for example, like coders who use just code to make music, and
mm,
it's very refreshing to not go through all that emotive experience of then putting down something on a
mm,
keyboard or
mm, mm.
but to use digits and be
Yeah.
like type something and then make music and also discover what is being made
Mm.
you know along with the listeners.
I
Yeah.
find that fascinating. I find it fascinating to often, because I grew up in that classical piano world, and and sometimes just putting your hands on the piano, I've had these just these memories from childhood of this is the way your hand should go, but then I feel like I never come up with anything exciting and new. And so then I might pick up a guitar, which I can't actually play the guitar, but I don't know where the notes are. But by me just tinkling on a few notes here and there, it's something new that I wouldn't have come up with on the piano. So uh, I can
Mm.
understand you wanting to use use different means such as coding to just find a new sound. But you know what I find really fascinating with your work is that it's not so much to the point that it's experimental, that it's like sometimes it's called sound art or noise art. It's still a very beautiful, well constructed music, which is commercially releasable and relatable, and I find that really quite an achievement, and but you're still very much you having your Indian background in
Yeah.
there as well, and there's always that identity in there in your music, and it's definitely something to be celebrated.
I think if I had to describe my music, it's like me grabbing or holding on to my like grandparents, okay,
Yeah,
and holding on to them and going to Burning Man or something.
yeah.
You know? and then making them like see, like watch the trip or something like that,
Yeah,
or take them around, like still hold on to them and show
yeah,
them.
yeah.
So that's the image that pops in my head.
Oh, I love that. Yeah.
It's like,
I did read a quote where you said you did like a boiler room track of was it there was a band, a fusion rocker band, Indian Ocean, and
Mhm.
I think I read that I think you it's a popular TV show in India, as I understand it. Two bands get together and you do remixes of each other's work, or two
It's a very
artists
popular
get to.
song, yeah.
Yeah, so I think you said you did a boiler room track of
Mother.
yeah, and if for me anyway, boiler room is like I don't know if boiler room's the same thing in India, but boiler room here is like you're doing like heavy dance track music, and you're like, you're raving it on late into the night at Burning Man. So
You're raving, yeah. You're raving, yeah.
yeah, right. So I just love how you could go from these scores of songs in Indian cinema of from certain states, and and speaking their voice of a certain film, to like a boiler room track, and going over to more electronic or experimental stuff. So do you find that having this diversity helps inform your writing for film, when a director has given you a brief, or do you find that you're just really concentrated on what the film is telling you?
Okay, so here's what. When you start on a film, you're literally on that film for a year and a half.
Wow, that's
And
a long time.
yeah, because
Yeah.
it takes that much time to get made. And then, there's poetry involved. There's, as I said, we make a lot of music pieces are vocal also. Um, so to be stuck on a project for a year and a half is a big deal, right? And if I were to make it more interesting for myself, it just gets easier for me. And then I throw myself into processes that I've not done before. Otherwise, it gets kind of boring. It's the same. You hire the same kind of team, and the set of technicians, and then it's like everybody's complacent because they all know, aha, okay, this is how it's done, and we do it. We're good at it. So, but obviously, the script is kind of interesting. If it is interesting, it's new. Then it's great to just throw in like a new process into the mix, and then nobody knows what to do.
Yeah.
So I think it works as a team. It's damn healthy for the team also.
And that's fascinating, because so then you're consciously, actively doing something to then find a new sound, such as throwing a new process in there. Is that, I read that you had an electric fan on stage. Is that correct? Did I read that right? Was that
I was inspired by this a German sound artist who I met in Zurich.
Yeah.
And her name is Karen. And Karen, I had in fact called her and I said, listen, I'm inspired by you. And, I think I might use an electric fan in my performance. So she was very excited and she said, great. I hope, you use it correctly. And I said, I'm just going to discover whatever happens with it. And then we were trying to use different kinds of materials, like paper materials, to flap correctly. But
Ah,
we still kept getting this subby rumble,
yeah,
and that rumble may not have translated eventually, but next to me it was quite interesting. It just
yeah, well,
created this, as you said, sound art,
yeah.
noise, music, concrete, what I want to call it. In fact, I have a question for you. I feel like jumping into sound art completely, like,
Yeah,
sound that doesn't,
yeah.
doesn't it doesn't stick to tempo, melody,
Mm,
scales,
mm,
blah blah.
mm,
But I
mm,
sometimes wonder, uh, when you're making it, everything just sounds nice. All
mm,
kinds of noise and chaos just
mm.
sounds good.
Wo-
So, how do you know whether it's working or it's not working?
Oh
If you
gosh,
know about
that's the
sound art.
hardest. That's the hardest question, isn't it? Like I just, for me, making music, I'm not fully a sound artist. I wouldn't call myself a sound artist, but I like listening to sound artists. Um, Mike Patton is one of them, where he'll just do guttural sounds and I
Oh,
hear a
that's
lot
cool.
of it in contemporary dance. And to me, for me, whether I like it or is good, to me is as long as it with anything with music, for me, it's just if it feels right in my bones, if I feel like I want to keep listening, if I feel like, oh, what's going to happen next, or if I'm still engaged in it,
Uh-huh.
I'm not like starting to flip through my phone and looking at my social media. Like, surely that's a good thing. I'm still engaged, So that's my antenna
Nice.
anyway. Yeah. And I think that's many creatives' question in whatever field we're in, isn't it? Like, what is good and what is mediocre? And
Yeah.
I guess we just gotta have to follow our gut.
I
Is
feel like sound art should be able to include literally everything, and nothing should go wrong about sound art. I mean, just
Yeah.
anything should be okay. And I think popular culture will not take sound art very like easily. They
Mm,
won't be able to engage, as you said,
mm,
because I think it doesn't give you enough material to think with. Like
mm,
it suspends you and it doesn't tell you what to
mm.
think.
I,
And
I feel in pop culture anyway, in the more kind of general population sense, the non-sound artist people, I would see it belonging in the world of theatre or dance, where there's visually something happening and people can connect the two sounds together, the sounds and the movement together. So I'm involved in that world a fair bit, and a lot of choreographers actually really like what I call sound art, because it doesn't, so to them, music says too much for them. They want the movement to say it, but the sound art is there to create an ambience, or more like a world to them. So they might want a really disparate world of dissonance and disarray, but the movement will say the story, but the sound creates the world.
the
So
environment.
that's how I've had that. I think that's quite a useful medium in terms of application of sound art, and also maybe horror films. Just throwing it out there, or tension, or thriller, or avant-garde experimental films. I would definitely go down that road if I was given that film, and start bowing strange things, or hitting things, or turning on electric fans and turning the sub right up like that. To me, that will.
Yeah, but that's what these sounds get stuck in. I mean, as soon as you make a slightly weirdish sound, it's considered to be horror.
It's
The
because
unknown. It's about the
yeah,
unknown.
yeah, and I think it's good, and that's how many of us find original sounds, isn't it? And then trying to
No, but I want the sounds to be like a part of a love story or something like
oh,
that.
right. Oh, yeah. Wow.
Why not, or just anything else? Maybe existence. Sound art can really explain existence or feelings of, yeah.
I've
Anyway.
got a question about different music actually. So Sneha, would you think you'd discover different music if you traveled to different parts of Australia? From Meenakshi Shere in Bombay. Before you answer that, I did read that you.
Actually, in fact, asking that question.
Sorry, what was that?
Sorry. I was
Sorry,
saying that, first of all, like, hello, Meenakshi. I sort of know you. I'm so happy to know you. I was going to say that, in fact, good you asked, because I feel that if I were thrown into any country, and please call me to Australia whenever you can, I would really be able to tell the difference in the music, because I think I'm just generally curious to find similarities and differences in people, and how, I don't know, people evolve, etc., in a place with the kind of food they eat, and the music they listen to, and how it affects them, affects each other.
certainly, I know from the Indigenous perspective, obviously the land that they own and are the custodians of. There's more and more being discovered by us white fellas and in our ignorance, and certainly there'd be a lot to discover in that part of the world, and certainly I'm still ignorant, very, I could learn a lot more, and it's on one of the to-do learning lists, where you go to different lands of the different peoples, and they have actually different instruments, and they have different song lines, they're called, and it's very unique to their people. So from that perspective, definitely there'd be differences. But I think from a popular culture sense, I think it's more like different scenes. So there's like a heavy rock metal scene, and there's like the singer-songwriter acoustic scene, and there's the pop, R&B scene, and there's the people who go to dance clubs. So it's sort of more segregated in terms of in the lifestyle, of people's pop culture taste and music.
I have something to say to that. So for the longest time, I used to talk about boyfriends and genres. And it's like, when you're dating somebody who's into blues and jazz and things like that, you're eating another kind of food, you're talking differently, dressed up differently, his hair is different, his shampoo is different. And then suddenly, let's say unfortunately, like, let's say at 20 or whatever, 21, I was dating somebody who was like that. And then 2 years later, I was dating somebody who was heavily into hip hop. And then we were eating Subways, and, we were a lot into street art and street clothing. And then I had that kind of colored hair in my, I chose that kind of color, and I used to use the bedhead shampoos, and, there was this whole shift. And then there was an influence of somebody who listened to a lot of world music, and then the life changed, and,
Yeah.
So yeah. So
it's an all-encompassing cultural experience for you in terms of genre of music. Yeah.
I also feel that if I listen to techno for too long, like let's say over a week, my nose becomes more pointed, or my
Yeah.
my features just become really pointed and edgy,
I've noticed that I read that you flew to Netherlands to research a new genre of music for a film. Is this something that you can talk more on?
Yeah, and do you want to know the twist in that story? Okay. Wait. So basically, I was to start work on a film, which is currently obviously stalled because of COVID. But last year, I had to start on the music, and I traveled to Netherlands because I wanted to check out Gabber.
Oh
Haban.
yeah, yeah, yeah. You got to go to Europe for that. Yeah,
Exactly, right. And I was in Switzerland when I first heard Gabber,
yeah, yeah.
and I was like, what is this? This. I mean, it gave me the same kind of senses. I mean, the same kind of sensations as the chutney music initially, or dubstep when I first heard
Oh
dubstep.
yeah,
Like,
dubstep. When I first heard dubstep, it was like groundbreaking. Yeah, it's like the
exactly,
drop.
right.
Yeah,
I know. I was like, what is this? How
what is
could
this
this
drop?
be
How?
born? I know, right?
Yeah,
So similarly, when I heard Gabber, it was just so like it was just like,
yeah, yeah. It hits you, and you can't go anywhere with Gabba. Yeah, it's just there.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I decided that I have to go and check this out. And it took me 3 months to sort of plan it, finish other things, and So in
Mhm.
May, I land up in Netherlands. I spend 3-4 days talking to artists, listening to whatever I could.
Mm.
Although the music festival season was gonna happen in the next month.
Mhm.
So there wasn't much happening on Gabber at that time in May.
Mm. Mm.
And I was thinking about staying put and sort of listening to as much as I could. And then suddenly I started to get these physical symptoms, okay? Like I started to smell too much, okay?
Yeah,
And I
right.
started, just hear me out. It clarifies itself. I started to smell too much, and I started to feel energetic and suddenly low on energy and suddenly very hungry, or things like that. And I started to wonder if I'm pregnant, because I had just gotten married in Jan and this is May, right? So I was like, am I pregnant or what? Because what is happening? Like, this is new. And then I just couldn't listen to Gabber anymore.
Oh
I mean,
wow! It's like
like it was too much.
instead of a taste aversion, you got a music aversion.
I know. It went out of the window, and I was
Yeah.
still in Rotterdam
Oh,
and meeting all these artists. But I just couldn't stand Gabba anymore.
I
And
love
then I
it.
came back to India. And then I
Yeah.
came back to India, and then I tested myself, and obviously it was positive. I was
Oh,
positively pregnant.
yeah.
And
Congratulations.
and I was
Yeah.
like, oh my God, now what do I do? Because I had committed to the director and the
Oh.
project that I'm gonna go Gabber on this one.
So you had already spoken to a director saying this is this is the experience that I'm heading
Yeah.
towards, or
Thankfully my director is uh he's very trusting, so
yeah.
he just trusts. He'll be like, what? I'll be like, Gabber. He's like, I don't care what that is, just do whatever you like.
That's that actually
just
leads
anything works.
that actually leads me into a question from earlier, from Christina Bowden. When you're communicating with directors, how much say do you normally have in the sound of the score? Do you give them a few examples of different sounds that they choose from, and how do you work through the collaborative process? So in that particular example, you said that director was like, yeah, just go for it. So, and is that a common experience with with the directors you've worked with?
No, not all of them, but there have been some directors I've worked with, like for that matter, Dibakar Banerjee, Anurag Kashyap, and Nandita Das, and I'm also going to be hopefully working with my husband, Kanu Behel, who also I regard as a good listener. So some of these directors really allow you to take charge, and they just tell you whether it works or not. With Dibakar, because he's so musically well read, it's you can discuss music in much deeper detail with him. And sometimes he's very clear also about what he wants, because he has pre-thought a lot of things that he can't get out of his head, while writing the script and all that.
Yeah, it sounds like it's a different process for different directors, which is which is my lived experience as well. If I've developed a relationship, maybe from smaller projects, you kind of already get to know their sensibilities and what they like, but then I feel like I might be able to just push them into a slightly more edgier direction, and because they trust me, they'll be like, yeah, go for it.
Yeah,
But then
yeah.
some other directors, if they have a really strong vision of their film, from 5 years ago, they've been writing this script, and they've been referencing this film, and this film in the temp music, and they might have a very strong audio or vision, if that's the right word, template in their head. So I guess it
Just
sounds like
to-
it's different.
Yeah, but just to add to that, Christina, to answer your question, basically, whatever you have in mind, you need to sort of execute it and like make those pieces and give those pieces to the director to slap onto the edits sometimes. And sometimes it's like you may talk a lot about the music that you want to make, but sometimes it's just, you need to just make it and show it to them. Like you need to make these scratches, as we call them. And then once they slap it on the edit, even if they've been completely averse to that kind of genre, they'll see it, realize, and they'll probably change their mind. So,
yeah, and find out sometimes you can talk about music as much as you want, or give them a temp track, or give them a YouTube link, but sometimes it's just easier to make it and show them.
Yeah.
What did you call it? A B track or a dem? What did you call it? You make a scratch track? A B
scratch track.
Yeah, right. We I guess we call it temps or demos. So yeah, in our language. Yeah.
But then a temp would be something that you make and then.
Oh no, temp's more like maybe that you might temp your own music. So you've written something in the past for another project and you put a temp track in there to say, how does it sit with that film? But temp music often
we call them references.
It's often reference tracks as well. We use that as well. But temp music's is actually the music in which has been placed in the rough cut of the film. So it might be from the editor just pulled it out of their iTunes library and chucked it in there for that's the actual temp track for us. I've got a question from the live audience, which is very exciting for us to have a live audience because Australia is slowly coming out of lockdown. What's your process from reading a script to forming a sound aesthetic for that project?
Is this Bryony's question you're referring to?
Previous, previous. It's from the live audience, which I'm not sure I've seen it somewhere else because I've been fed the questions from someone else.
Okay. Sorry, could you repeat that for me?
This is it's from the live audience. What's your process from reading a script to forming a sound aesthetic for that project?
Dwelling on the script, taking walks, just living life, letting it linger, letting it brew on its own.
Yeah.
Sometimes if I'm formulating too much, it doesn't happen. In fact, the other day I was trying to crack something and I couldn't, and I kept thinking about it. And then you have this imposter syndrome that seeps in. You start feeling that you're not good enough and you've been fooling everybody all this while. So then, and then thankfully my managers called and they said, listen, hold on, we still haven't worked out the budgets and timelines. And that sort of gave me some relief that, okay, that buys me a little time. And then one morning I just woke up with the melody in my head,
Oh, wow.
And I was like, and now I'm feeling, and then I started feeling damn like anxious that now the budgets and the timelines should work out because now I have a melody. So, so that's the process really.
I found it really interesting that that you would go to the region to live and eat their food and sort of live the experience of that region, particularly that film where it was so specific to that region that you wanted to experience that life a bit more. And did you feel that helped your writing the songs for that film, for Gangs of Wasseypur?
Oh yes, it did. In fact, I did it because I felt under-informed about that region.
Oh,
and
okay.
I felt that I should be at least as informed as the other HODs, and so I went and lived there for a little while. But
Oh, wow.
I have to say that sometimes that can also have an effect on you, because you're you're changing your world for a while. So it may affect the music in a very nice way, in a positive way, but you might feel like their problems and their things become yours, and then you kind of get
They'll get
distracted.
really wrapped up into it. Yeah, you become really invested,
Overwhelmed.
emotionally invested, which could be
Yes,
overwhelming.
I kind of felt spent after that.
Yeah, wow. But obviously, the industry and the people loved it, because it seemed to be so well. It's been really well received. So hopefully, that was the price that needed to be paid, perhaps.
I mean, the film did really well, and somehow in India, that's how it works. I mean, if the film does well, the music obviously gets a lot more leverage, and music also, pushes the
pushes the
film.
film. Yeah.
So it's kind of like that. If Gangs of Wasseypur had not done well, I'm telling you, and I feel so, that the music would have just been a niche album, which might have been nice, but not as popular.
Oh, interesting. So, yeah, and it often is the case where the two need to work hand in hand, don't they? I've just got a question from Bryony Kidd. I've read that only about 1 in 10 film directors in India is a woman. I don't know if this is still the case. This was from a couple of years ago. But I wonder if Sneha has worked with many women directors, and if that experience is different for her than working with men. And also, do you think there are significant barriers for women composers in the film industry at the moment?
Okay. Well, I have worked with only 2 female directors, and also briefly on a short film with 2 more female directors. No, there isn't any major difference. No, it's just that I have a I have a little complexity of communication with my mother, and so you'll see that I'm more comfortable with the male directors. So my mother and me sort of have this communication thing, which sort of, I think, seeps into all my relationships with of just women,
Yeah.
friendships with women. And so I think I feel more vocal around men what to do.
That's really interesting. So I guess there's no, what you're saying is that there's, just because there's woman to woman doesn't necessarily mean you're more at ease, because just from the way that you have grown up, that was your lived experience. And certainly I feel I often have that sense as well, because I have an older brother, and he taught me like Led Zeppelin, and he showed me all the cool stuff as a kid, and I just, we would talk, he would tell me about his girl problems, and certainly, yeah, I think there's something to be said about the way in which you interact as a child, and how it informs your interactions in your adult life, in your working life.
Yeah.
Okay, so I just wanted to mention someone from the audience, just to give you
also,
more.
Sorry to cut you, but also the last question that Bryony has asked about, are there still barriers for women composers?
Oh, yes.
I would say no, not for the kind of films, at least I would want to work for. I haven't come across that. I do feel that if you're in Bollywood, then you're not just dealing with directors, you're dealing with a lot of other people. You're dealing with producers, blah blah blah, and not everybody may know how to be normal with women HODs. I mean, that's how I see it.
As in, if you're the HOD, so you feel the people who talk to you or answer to you are have a sense of discomfort.
Yeah, because a lot of times I have come across people, like, even if I'm fine, to discuss, and but some people may not be used to uh, chatting about a film. And how do I put this? And that's what I'm saying, that the kind of directors I want to work with, I don't think have these kind of problems. But if you do want to work for the core Bollywood, there might be differences there. There might be, because you might come across people who have been in Bollywood since, or producing in Bollywood for years, and have not really communicated with a female HOD. So, for example, like let's say you have to discuss the monies with a producer who's never never really discussed monies with a music director female, and then it's just.
And how do you approach that situation? Do you just charge on and just act as if nothing is wrong or awkward, or do you try and somehow appease them to put them more at ease?
I think the better example here would be when I started out. I was 21, 22. And, I used to be in a studio, let's say. I used to be inside the studio working on a song with a team of musicians. And then the sound
just say that again.
Musicians would step out for a smoke, let's say.
I'll just say that again.
All the boys would be gone out. Sorry, I'm saying that they would, let's say, so let's say I'm in a session, a studio session, right?
Yeah.
And let's say it's my song, and there's a sound engineer. There are, let's say, 3-4 musicians, live musicians, and we are all working on my song. And then let's say the engineer and 2-3 other guys step out to take a smoke. And I was like 22, not really smoking, and I was not really the boys, hanging among the boys, and I was much younger, etc. So I used to find it a bit difficult to, because a lot of
relate.
Chat, I mean, it's very common even in as a discussion in corporate scenario.
Yeah.
So
absolutely. It's those little interactions in between the work.
Yes.
That actually helps to bed relationships, and how we decide to engage with that. I guess that's the challenge.
I'll tell you a story. I was in a studio, okay, and I was working with this sound engineer, and we had to finish something, and he was finishing it, for a deadline, and suddenly another music composer popped up in our session. He popped up and he said, "Hey, whatever." He said hello to the sound engineer. I didn't know him very well. But he said hello to the sound engineer, and he said, "I've got you something," and then he got him a bottle of whiskey as a gift.
Yeah, right.
Right. And he said, "Dude, your work really was great on this last project and all that. I just wanted to give this to you." And then, and then I was looking at the engine. I was thinking, I never finished the project and got him a bottle of whiskey. I mean, these guys, I think, have another kind of a
relationship. Yeah. Another like type of rapport.
Like another kind of bro-ness, which I think I'm missing out on. I mean, I do have bro-ness now with a lot of people. A lot of people have bros,
Yeah.
But it took time to.
Yeah. I think it's time too, and the more that we are just there in people's. I mean, they've got the men engineers, I'm sure, have women in their lives, of wives, sisters, mothers, and so it's just a different way of working, and how we choose to relate to them is our choice. And it's just with any. I would hope that at one day it'll just be people, not men.
Oh my God, this opens another can of worms, actually.
Yeah.
Again, in Indian society, and I'll only speak for that and the society that I live in. I find that a lot of times it's very difficult for men to take orders. So if I were to tell anybody, while we were alone in a studio, it would be fine. But if I were to
Mm,
tell somebody, instruct somebody to do something in front of other people, I
mm,
would see there was a stark difference in the way these,
mm,
these team members were.
mm.
Uh,
And
around.
how would you get around that?
I struggled a lot, to be
Mm,
honest. I mean,
mm,
I used to I used to really struggle at one
mm,
point in fact, during sound tripping and all that. And
mm,
then I think 2 years later, somebody came and said, "You're trying to befriend everybody, and that's not going to work.
mm,
You're not in
mm,
that position. You just need to
mm,
expect that you do your job well and
mm,
people
mm,
respect you for your work." And I
mm,
was like, "No, but I,
mm,
these are all my peers, and
mm,
I
mm.
want to be their friend."
Yeah.
And I think that with that advice came in so late, Mimi,
Uh,
that I
yeah.
wish.
And have you
Uh,
instigated that approach in future in projects?
yes,
Did you start instigating that approach later on?
yeah,
And did you find
yeah,
it effective?
yeah. In fact,
Yeah.
all those people who I was in fact struggling with
Mm,
are back in my life, and we have
mm. And it's
the correct
working.
amount of broness and the correct
Yeah.
amount of, you know,
Yeah.
rapport, professional rapport.
Yeah. Well, that's really encouraging to hear. You went through this moment in time where you're like, well, I just want to be friends, and then somebody advised you to take a new approach, and it actually worked. And over the course of time, it seems to have worked for you. So that's really encouraging to hear for me as well.
I'm glad you see it like
Mm,
that. I
mm,
sometimes do feel that those 2, 3 struggling years, which I spent
mm,
over just mulling over
mm,
these unnecessary things, would have been put to better use. But anyway, I guess
mm.
that's just
But I guess the more we talk about it to each other and in
right.
places like this, we will inform each other. So yeah, thank you for sharing that experience with us here, especially in this sort of, in this format.
Yeah.
Um, Here's one who's relevant. Are there many in this sort of topic? Are there many female screen composers? I guess they mean, are there many screen composers in your industry? I guess in India, or have you met many?
Do you mean underscorers?
Yeah, are there many female screen composers? I guess either. Are there any? Have you met many female screen um, music directors and underscorers in India? Is it quite?
No. So met I met a songwriter
Mm,
who's a singer songwriter who eventually started to make songs for films, Jasleen Royal. And then I have met Alokananda, Alokananda Dasgupta, who's a friend, and she and I discuss many things, life
mm-hmm,
and friends and everything. And
mm-hmm,
she specifically likes to score, which is very inspiring.
mm, mm. Um, and okay, and another audience question. Uh, which film composers or musical directors have influenced you?
Hmm.
I think you said you were a really big fan of any Stanley Kubrick film, but I wasn't sure if that was because of the films or because whether there was his choices in his scores.
I think so. It's very hard for me to obviously just take a few names and then, uh,
Mm,
to be honest, yes, I like Stanley Kubrick's choice of music and sound design a lot. Um, in India, I have obviously grown up on all kinds of songwriting music directors. To be honest, this question always is very hard for me to answer.
yeah, I
It's
find.
like, yeah,
And it's
like
interesting you
the
opened the
people that you like the most. Yeah.
you opened up quite early on saying you just love all types of music. You know,
Yeah.
you could be listening to the sounds from the background of your house and you could hear something out of that. And so I think it's it just goes to show the eclectic creativeness of you, of being able to take what resonates with you in of many different things to then be, you know, to implement it into your life and psyche. So I can understand. I find that question really hard too. I find that a
Yeah, I
difficult
mean, I wouldn't
question.
want to fool you by dropping a few names. I mean, that would be the easiest for me, and I can
Yeah,
still do it, but it's just not,
yeah.
that's just not the right. Yeah.
Just as a clarification, again, to your question of if you travel to Australia, you know, what sort of different music would you discover? And so, as I had said before, the Indigenous culture here, there's so many different peoples and so many different peoples here, and you know, they do this thing called a smoking ceremony, like so. There's different lands, and I'm from Darug land, and the Queensland people are from a different land of different peoples. And the idea was there was not very much warfare between the Indigenous, between the different cultures. And so they would go from one, when you go to the border, when one would go to the border, they would do a smoking, sort of, they call it a smoking ceremony, and to announce like, hey, we're here. You know, do you mind if we come in? And then I think some sort of ceremony would occur. I would hate to be misrepresenting our Indigenous people, but this is sort of my understanding of it. And so, as a consequence, everyone had their different foods, and you know, the land is so different. There's desert versus rainforest versus temperate forest versus beach. So I'd imagine the foods would be different too. And so
Yeah.
someone has pointed out that even the didgeridoo are made in different scales and depending on the trees that they were made from, because our land is so big and there's different tones
Yeah.
and timbres. And I was researching a film as well where I asked, it had an Indigenous Aboriginal girl in it, and I asked an elder if it was okay to use the didgeridoo for this particular story, and they were like, not a good idea, because in their world, you know, it's not appropriate for a young girl to have the didgeridoo. So you know, there's very specific cultural significance to the different instruments and things like that. So I just thought I'd share that information with you.
No, in fact, I mean, that triggers an idea in my head. You know what we should do? You should come to India. Like after all this subsides, you should come to India, spend a month. I'll go to Australia, spend a month there, and let's just come back and exchange notes and make a song.
I'd love that.
Exchange notes through a song.
Yeah,
like
that would be
just
amazing.
put in whatever you want,
yeah,
and whatever you gather from India, and I will do the same.
Yeah,
what do you think?
That sounds wonderful. I'll shake your hand on that if we're allowed to in COVID.
Done. It's a deal.
And I guess as we're wrapping up, and given the platform that we're in, I read that you have just become a mum in January. Is that right? January
Yes.
This year. Congratulations.
Remember the symptoms I was getting in Netherlands
in May. Yeah, May last Netherlands.
Yeah.
So and I of course it's been an unusual year for the whole world. But how have you found the balance of continuing your creative work and being a mum? Have you felt a significant shift or change or difference?
Yeah, I've started liking melodies again. So over the last 4 or 5 years, I was getting averse to melodies. Any melodic content seemed like I was committing too much to emotions.
Yeah,
certain emotions. And I just felt like, no, I just don't want to hear any melodies. Like if you start with a I don't want to go anywhere after that. That's too much commitment,
Too much commitment.
but I think ever since this baby has happened, at least I have started re-looking at melodic content, and hopefully, maybe I'll find melodies that I feel are not made for people, but for self, etc., etc.
Mm, mm.
So I'm waiting to actually create melodies that are my own.
And so, and would that process inform, say, your next film? Your love of melody, or is that more for? Do you write soundtrack? Do you write albums just to release as an artist, or do you always write for a film?
So far it's always been for film.
Mm,
But now this year I sort of have decided to also do independent albums and publish them myself.
Oh,
Publishing is
fantastic!
also another topic in Indian music scene.
Yeah.
We've always like published under a label and sort of waive off all the rights, etc.
Mm,
And we don't own our own music. So now this year onwards, I feel like also making a lot of music and owning it, publishing it.
mm. Yeah, interesting. Yeah, and it's interesting you've said that. I've done a similar thing because the film world has slowed down a little bit. But it's interesting. Do you find it a different experience to writing something that's more from yourself, more for you, without serving the purpose of picture? Has it been a different experience?
So it seemed a little difficult for me because I felt that if there was a direction specified from somewhere, then it gets easier for me to make music. And I was telling a friend this, that to make my own music, I don't feel so sorted in the head at the moment. I don't know what to make it about. And the friend said that but that's the process of making the music. You'll figure out. You can't prefigure and then make the music.
Yeah.
I sort of liked that. He said, "Why don't you just
Sorry, what did your friend say?
make it and made on the way, like connection?" I thought that. He said that you sit and it'll find its,
Yeah.
its emotion or its.
Yeah, it's all emotion. Yeah.
Story.
All right. If there's any more questions, have we caught all the questions? How did you get your music heard when you first started? What would you and your advice be to anyone starting in the industry? From Anonymous.
It was okay. Wow.
That's a big one, isn't it?
Yeah, that's a really.
I don't envy you with that one.
Personally, for that one, I would just say that make it interesting for yourself because you'll be sticking to it for many, many years.
That's very sound advice.
And also, if you want to work in films, please chase the directors you like, films you like, people whose minds you like, and then try to meet them.
I guess if that's coming from a film composer in Australia, I could add that. How did you get your music heard when you first started? I could add that to go to film schools and just score lots of student films, because eventually those student filmmakers will become professional filmmakers. One in 10 will become a professional filmmaker, and you just practice your chops on that. That would be how I'd start if that was an Australian composer starting out. Well, Sneha, thank you so much. It's been such a wonderful chat. I've just adored researching you and your work and listening to your process, and I'm going to take you up on that 1 month India trip and discover all the different foods.
Carolina's already in. She wants to shoot it.
Yeah. Oh, that's what she was saying. Can she and
Jacqueline is very quiet.
And it's been such a wonderful experience to have you here and part of WIFT and APSA and Screen Queensland. So if you're ever in Sydney, come visit me in the Blue Mountains. I live right in the national park. My house is right in the national park, and you can listen to the sounds of the Australian bush. We've got the cicadas and the cockatoos and the magpies all going now in summer. I think you'd really be amazed by the soundscape here. So
great. I loved whatever I saw of Australia. We loved it. Although when the only night we were in Sydney, we were playing slot machines all night.
Oh,
Our Airbnb was next to a place, and we reached so late that the only place that was open for a couple of beers and was just
yeah,
open.
right. Whereabouts
Yeah.
were you?
So we played all night. Me and my husband, we just played all night.
Yeah, unfortunately, Sydney has a little bit of a dearth of, has too much pokey machines. So we're trying to change that. That has taken over the live music scene a little bit too much.
Oh,
Yeah,
ouch.
so yeah, that is an interesting, that it is a bit of an issue, but things are hopefully will be changing. They've just changed the laws to try and make live music more accessible and easier for people to put on, really. All right, well, I think we'll call it the day unless I haven't missed anything. And
Thank you.
thanks so
Sincerest
much.
have been on an interview, because I know I'm talking to somebody who will call my bullshit.
Oh, so no, not at all.
It's
You're not.
great talking to you. I'm gonna be in touch with you.
Okay, I've loved that.
Yeah?
Let's stay in touch. Yeah, it'd be
Great.
wonderful. And
Thanks
so
so much. Thanks, Apsa.
thanks for
Thanks,
everyone.
Nidhi.
Yes, thanks for having us.